Farmers today are facing rising costs, volatile markets, and extreme weather. The Better Way to Farm podcast digs into strategies to help you take control of farm inputs and maximize profit so your farm can thrive for generations. Remember to take advantage of our free resources at abetterwaytofarm.com. Now, from America's Heartland, here's your host.
Hey guys, Rod here at A Better Way to Farm, where we increase yields and improve profits and hopefully make your life better all around. I've had numerous calls in the last 3 to 4 days that have come in and they're talking about the fact that they're doing foliar feeding and they're getting burned and they're wanting to know what's causing that. So let's review what we've got to do here to do this correctly. Number one, we know that the time is not a clock, it is a thermometer. And we've talked about this, we've really stressed it, that we know that we want to make sure that the temperature is 86 degrees or below. And let me say this, for all the people who have differing opinions, I respect that. God bless you. I'm going to talk about what we do. I'm going to talk about what we've had success with. And so we're not going to have a debate here. We're not even going to answer people with other comments, just so you know. But guys, here's what I know. We work with hundreds of growers who are doing this and they're getting success. And number one, we know we got to spray below 86 degrees in temperature. Number two, we know that if the temperature got above 86, we also have to wait for a 10-degree drop from the high. So in other words, if the temperature, like it did here today, got up to 93 degrees, then what we have to do is wait for it to get down to 83. It isn't 86 and then go. It's down to 83. And I'm going to come back to this and really pound on something here that's equally important that we probably haven't stressed enough. There are a lot of people who follow us who are trying to do what we say. They're not using our products. And so they're saying, hey, we're getting some situations here, help us out. And there's a lot of things that can happen in there. But number one, we know we've got to have the temperature correct for the time of day, so to speak. Number two, you guys know that we like high pressure and low volume, a small droplet size. There are other people with dissenting opinions, and that's quite all right. I wish them the best. But we do know that our guys are getting tremendous success doing what they're doing. We want to see that pressure above 65 pounds. We wouldn't be mad if it was even up in the 85 to 90 range. We want to see that volume at 10 gallon or less. You guys know that I like 8 or less or even 5 or less. And I'm going to come back to that because there's a caveat here that I'm going to get into later. And I really need you to follow all the way through here because I want you guys to be successful. Whether you're using our stuff or not, I don't want you to burn your crop. I don't want you to have a negative response. I don't want you to have a negative experience. We know we've got to get the pressure right. We know we've got to get the tip size down to where we need because we've got to be able to get 65 pounds of pressure and do 10 gallon or less, hopefully 8 gallon or less most of the time, maybe 5 gallon or less to be the most successful. We know that when we're doing this, we're probably looking at earlier in the morning and late in the day. And so we've got some things there. Now let's talk about specifically some of the things that we have seen that have created some stress that's caused some burn. We had one particular grower who reached out to us, and when they went out to do this, they obviously didn't have their booms clean. And we knew that because about the first 250 feet into the field, they smoked everything. And so I suppose they had rinsed their tank, but they didn't quite get it all the way out. But for whatever happened, where they first took off, their pressure was right, their volume was right, all of that was correct. There was something else in that tank mix, and it took it about 250 feet to purge out. Very strange looking. I had someone do some custom spraying for me right here across the road. We had a similar experience. It didn't last very long, but you could just tell where the machine set as they were firing the lines up that there was something that was in there for just a little bit, and it just zinged our corn for just about 30 feet. And so those things are going to happen, but getting it clean, getting it rinsed out, that's paramount to being successful. Let's talk about some of the things, though, that could be causing this burn. Number one, not all products are suited to foliar feed. We've got people that come in and they say, we've got a product just like what you guys have there at A Better Way to Farm. But it's cheaper. Guys, good and cheap are not brothers. They're not even cousins. And they don't ever come in and they say it's just like it, only better. And they come in and say it's just like it, only cheaper. And what happens here is we start getting products, whether it be starter fertilizers, foliar fertilizers, or micronutrients. And one of the things we want to make sure of is the purity of that product. You know, you guys know that we're adamantly opposed to heavy metals, cadmium, arsenic, lead, mercury, all those things. We don't like those. And the fact of the matter is, those are cell disruptors and they mess with the growth of the plant. They also, in and of themselves, if they're heavy enough load in there, can create burns. So we're asking you to make sure the products that you're using are clean, that they're pure. We don't want to be using, this is no place to be using spent acid. This is no place to be using a cheap nitrogen product. I've had some people who someone came to them and said, hey, we think it'd be a good idea. Why don't you just foliar feed some 28%? Guys, that's a terrible idea. I tell everybody there are things that you'll go do and you'll only do them once. Foliar feeding 28%, you'll just do that one time because you will make such a mental impression in your brain that you will never, ever do it again. Guys, skip that step. I'm going to ask you guys, don't argue with me. Don't try and prove me wrong. I'm trying to do things that are going to save you money, save you despair, if you will. So quality products, clean tanks, those are really, really key. And guys, I want to talk specifically about something that maybe we haven't hammered enough on, but I'm going to start doing better. There's also an index where you add your temperature and your humidity together. And that range needs to be 140 to 160. I'm probably not going to freak out on the low end, but when we get above the high end, that's going to be trouble. And for instance, right here now, where I'm setting in southeast Iowa, I can see my thermometer over there on the wall. We have a 78 degree temperature, which is golden, right? I mean, that's like perfect for foliar feeding, except that we also have an 88% humidity. So what does that mean? We're adding them up and we're coming up with 166. So we're out of that range. And anytime we get out of that 140 to 160, we're asking for trouble. Now, do you get away with it? And you guys know I don't like that phrase. You'll probably get away with it. Bad idea. Yeah, most of the time. But here's where I think we're really starting to really ramp this thing up. Number one, maybe we're trying to put too many things in there. I'm getting recipes coming in here and they've got insecticide, another insecticide, a fungicide, maybe some crop oil. They're putting in high doses of copper. We're seeing way too many micronutrients go in. Guys, I don't think I've ever looked at a recommendation from Midwest Labs for our stuff that called for more than 8 ounces of copper at one time. And I get concerned when we start trying to put too much stuff in there all at once. And so too many things together, too high a rate of things. And in particular, guys, I want to talk about the two things that I think are hurting us is this idea of the temperature plus the humidity. I got up the other morning, I woke up at 5:30 and it was only 82 degrees, which you could have foliar fed at. Our humidity was literally 97%. So we were way outside of that 140 to 160, even at that hour. Guys, there may be some days when you just can't run. That's the bottom line. We got to pay attention to that. But I think the real crux of this comes in now. I know that reading labels is kind of like getting your toenails pulled out with a pair of pliers. Most of us hate to do that. But I think it would behoove us to take a look at some of these labels on these fungicides and on these insecticides. I was talking to Denny about this and he said, Rod, he said, you know, some of those labels say that damage has been observed at blah, blah, blah. So we don't want you to do that. And he's like, that was not a bunch of guys sitting around a coffee shop trying to dream up rules for do's and don'ts. It was because damage was observed. So I say that because sometimes some of those labels on those insecticides and fungicides will say, when applied at or above this temperature, we get burned. And that's just the insecticide or the fungicide by itself. We all want to think that the insecticides and the fungicides are inert. We want to think that they are not going to impact the plant, but they are. The plant's going to metabolize them. They're going to touch the leaf. And we are not exempt from the laws of chemistry. And so it's going to impact us. One of the things that I think that might have to work, and this is where I talked about the rate. You guys know that I believe lower is better, with the caveat of when we get into these insecticides and these fungicides, I think we probably better be thinking about going back to that full 10-gallon rate. That's as high as I want to go for a successful foliar feed. But I think putting on a big dose of micronutrients and some fertilizer and some insecticide and some fungicide is too much. I think some of those fungicides and insecticides may have some oil already in them. I think there are a lot of things that we can learn by reading those labels, and I'm not going to go through what all of those are, but I just think you need to sit down and you need to go through them, guys. But if they say we have observed injury in this condition, or they say don't do this, we don't want to go against that label. We just don't. And so I feel like when we're spraying the fungicide, the insecticide, all the rules still apply. High pressure, low volume, but the low volume may be 10. That may be as low as we can go in order to stop that. Guys, another thing that we can do that will help us is turn those tips a quarter of a turn. So instead of forcing it down into the canopy, turn them so they're pointing backwards, and we're putting that out over the top of the canopy and letting it float down. I think sometimes we can get injury just from the mere application. I think when we see these guys out foliar feeding corn and the corn is really tall and maybe they didn't think to move their booms up, or maybe they can't put their booms up high enough and they're spraying straight down onto that plant, there are times you can actually get damage to the tissue just using water or water and an insecticide. And so I would encourage you that it might be worth your time to tilt those, make a spin 1/4 of a turn, spraying backwards so that they're not forcing that water down onto that leaf tissue, but it can just float down on there gently and go down in between and not necessarily just smoke that top 2 or 3 plants. So guys, these are just some things that I want you to think about. We're genuinely concerned. We want you to succeed. We're getting these calls. And I think the things that we have done is we have violated the 140 to 160 rule because of the outrageous humidity and tremendous heat. I think that maybe we need to add a little more water when we're doing fungicide and insecticide. I think we need to turn the tips backwards instead of forcing them straight down. And I think we probably need to consider very carefully how heavy we load that. Maybe we can't put everything in there that we want to, but we've got to figure out what's most important and what's most going to work for us, and judiciously say we're going to apply this because we don't want burn. We need those leaves as healthy as they can be. That's our factory. We're spraying fungicide to keep the leaves healthy, right? And so we just want to keep them that way. Guys, I respect that you guys have listened to us. I hope that you respectfully consider all these things. It's intended from the heart to help you to do better, because that is what we want. That's our number one concern here, is that the growers all do better. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, we really do hope you're having a better day.